Hello everybody and welcome to my Age of Empires 4 Beginner's Guide video. This is going to be a video going over some of the more essential things you need to learn when playing a new match in Age of Empires 4. A few things to get out of the way first. This is not a complete guide and I'm not a professional. I play this very casually, so if the feedback is positive and no one rages at me for making some mistakes, I'll probably make this a series going into more detail. And if I do, I'll make a playlist for you to check out. So I'm playing as Holy Roman Empire in this match, meaning I have a few different benefits. Let's go ahead and start things off, and I can explain things on the way. I would tell most of your villagers to start gathering food from sheep. Reason being is that's a quick and easy way to get your primary source of food, and that's one of the most important resources in the game. I would then take one of your other villagers, just build a house somewhere. And if you're playing as HRE, you get the prelate, which I would keep near your villagers getting the food because you're actually going to have increased and faster gathering rates for your villagers. The other primary resource you're going to need is gold, so I would build a mining camp, and some of the new villagers you would send off to the mining camp. Now, since you're HRE, Holy Roman Empire, you're going to be at a little bit of a disadvantage. You're going to want to really speed up the gold income. Reason being is most civilizations start with 100 gold, but if you're playing as Holy Roman Empire, you actually start with 0 gold, but you have the prelate. So if you want to speed that up, you could send the prelate over here to the gold pile. I would say for one of the most essential tips when the game starts in Age 4, two things. One is to immediately send your scout around and start discovering through the fog of war of what's going on, whether that be resources, locations, defensive positions. I think more importantly is to be gathering as much sheep as possible. They will automatically start following your scouts. And once you get a select few, you want to press Q or this button here right back on your town center. That will drop off the sheep at your town center for your villagers to keep getting food. Another important aspect of your villagers is really the more villagers you have, the more successful you're ultimately going to be, because you can build buildings faster, get more resources, whatever the case is. So I would actually always at least usually have a villager being trained at almost all times. I think there are some conditions where that's not necessarily the case, but by and large, always have villagers under construction or being trained. And you can check this by the global queue down here. To make this a little bit easier for yourself, you hit Control 1 on your town center. Now if I press number 1 on my keybinds here, I can see what's happening on that town center, and I can just move and start training more villagers even if I'm not looking. To go right back to your town center, you press H. I might have changed that in the keybinds, but I think that's what it is. And then slash for me takes me back to my scout, so I can kind of flip-flop pretty early on in the game. Now, there is an opponent scout here. If you were to get closer, I would have taken my villagers and seek shelter. Not because I'm worried for their lives, but the more villagers in your town center, the more arrows they would fire. I would have an opportunity to actually kill that scout. Now, I have enough resources here to go to the second age, which is 400 food, 200 gold. I would select usually like 3 or 4 villagers, and you make your decision of which building you want to go for. Me, I think for Holy Roman Empire, it's the chapel. I can go into a bit more detail of why that's important in another video, but I will start constructing that Age 2 building. Now, this is kind of all dependent on what you want to do into the next age. I actually don't think you need probably more than 2 or 3 villagers building your second age building, unless you're fearful that you're very behind, you're seeing other people aging up rather quickly. You want to make a presence in Age 2. Other than that, I don't really think you're going to need a whole lot of villagers building your Age 2 building. It's important to scout early on and see what your opponent's doing. Of course, they're going to probably be taking sheep as well, as we can see over here. You want to see if your opponent is potentially doing what's called a forward proxy. Is this the only way through the center, by the way? If so, that's kind of crazy. Your opponent could be doing what's called a forward proxy, which means putting military production buildings very far away from their base, close to your base. Actually, what's happening right now is a great instance of an error I've made, which is I've reached my population capacity, which we can see down here. I can no longer train more villagers. The training will actually complete, but when it hits 99%, it will actually not spawn the villager. I need more houses. And this is a sort of gridlock instance that you don't want to be in, whether that's military units, more villagers, whatever. It's really not a good place to be in at the position I'm in now, so I've already made a mistake. But what you can do is make a couple of houses. I usually like to be at least 10 or 20 population ahead of what I have versus, you know, what I can afford. Now with this second tech, I'm going to put the prelate in the chapel. Again, you don't really necessarily need to worry about that for this video. All that's really important is that he's going to start inspiring my villagers for faster gathering times. Once you're in age 2, you want to start moving into making your military units, whatever the case is. For Holy Roman Empire, they really specialize in the man-at-arms, which are built at the barracks. You can hover over each particular production building to see what sort of units you can make, and the man-at-arms are indeed at the barracks here. I would make at least 1 or 2 of these, and you can start preparing yourself to see what sort of military units you want to build. I actually don't know where my opponent is. He's got to be in this corner. I think we're always diagonally across on this map. In terms of like what's important for resources, wood is not really all that important in age 1. Really the priorities should be food and gold, maybe a little bit of wood depending on what you're trying to do. And stone, I would say, is not important at all in age 1. You want to probably build a mill earlier than what I've done here. Reason being is there's this wheelbarrow upgrade that increases the carrying capacity of villagers and their movement speed. And that just really pays so many dividends. So it's best for you to get that as early as possible. This dude is Delhi. Okay, so that's good to know. So I've seen where my opponent is. I didn't see any military production buildings here. He has a tower. That's about it. If you want to go for defensive, maybe you're a little bit worried of your position, or maybe you don't necessarily like where you're located. That happens a lot in like the mega random type seeds. You can start building walls. The game will tell you that it's very important to get a second town center as early as possible. That really requires 300 stone. So if you're not going to be building stone walls, but you want a second TC, that way you can pump your villagers twice as fast. And it also gives you a little bit of population as well. For your population increase, a town center will probably be your next bet. In terms of gathering rates, they are different in Age of Empires 4 compared to... I'm not actually sure if other games in the Age series have this, I guess you would call it a feature or not. But gathering from deer and sheep are incredibly fast. But getting food from, say, berries, unless you're a particular civilization that specializes in berries, like opposite in Delhi, are very slow. So you get very slow gathering rates here from berries. They're just pretty easy. And then farms are rather slow as well. I should have put that over here for influence. I would gather faster if I were over there, but that's okay. And then English specialize in farms. So it kind of just all depends. Each civilization has a little bit of better specialties over another. There's also a emphasis that you got to make sure that you're not over gathering on particular resources. I mean, you might even argue that I'm over gathering a little bit right now on wood, so I might pull a few villagers off of there and transition into farms. And maybe as I'm finishing gathering all of the food available to these sheep, I could potentially build a mill. My mini-map is telling me there's actually a lot of deer right here, and I can start gathering from there. You want to make sure you're protected, of course. Maybe I could build an outpost here in case those villagers are attacked, if they could garrison temporarily. But I'm going to focus on building my military. There are some essential upgrades. I think the wheelbarrow is really important. You want to make sure you're getting some of your upgrades like the forestry, the double broad axe, even the specialized pick, as well as the horticulture upgrade are all very, very important. Again, I'm not playing the best in this particular video because I'm trying to showcase everything, but nonetheless, these things are important as the game kind of progresses, and it's important to always see what your enemy's up to. If you can't see what your enemy's doing or check on them periodically, there's quite a big potential that you can be really taken back or surprised by what your opponent is preparing for. I can now build into the castle age. This is kind of where, again, a lot of this is personal preference. I think for just the purposes of this video, I'm going to go with the cathedral. Currently, the way that Age of Empires 4 is designed is that if you lose all of your landmark buildings, which is a win condition here, I currently have 2. Landmarks are the buildings you need to advance to the next age. So age 1, you of course have your starting town center. Age 2, I built this one. Age 3, I'm building this one. If you lose all of these landmarks, you will be eliminated from the game. However, with a proposed change to the balance in Age of Empires 4, we're going to be seeing that if you're playing in teams, that's not going to be the case. You can lose all your landmarks, but you'll still be in the game. For one-on-one, of course, you lose your landmarks, you will be eliminated. However, in teams, which is where I like to play, that won't be the case soon. However, as I'm recording this, you'll be eliminated. So with this particular landmark, I will be gaining a lot of gold from capturing relics. The way to do that is to get some prelates. So make sure that those guys are training now. Really, I should have made these earlier. I want to find where the relics are. They're located on the mini-map. There are these things here. Capturing relics will provide me actually infinite gold over time. And we're starting to get to the point where we want to transition into a stronger mid to late game presence. That means really capitalizing on some of our resources, like gold, like food. We want to be having a lot of farms, and really building out our military. I can build another town center. It looks like right over here would be absolutely perfect. And while buildings are under construction, you can still assign them to a control group. So I'll just double-click both these town centers. You can see I have both of them. And I'll assign that to Team 1 again. Now you'll see that there's 2. I now have 2 town centers here. Meaning, if I, once this is fully constructed, I build 2 villagers, we'll actually see both buildings construct them. Such is the case if I were to make this control group 2. You can see both of these buildings, that little tiny yellow bar under there. There are constructing units, 2 units at once. So let's go ahead and we'll pick up our relics. You can only pick up relics when you're in age 3. I think there is a civ that allows you to pick them up in age 2, but don't quote me on that. I don't want to sound like a Kevin, as it were. Playing as Holy Roman Empire, once I get these relics, I can kind of peel off a lot of my units off gold. It looks like we got a little bit of an attack coming in. I have a lot of man-at-arms. Looks like I messed up and made a spearman. I'll get the unique upgrades for some of the man-at-arms. By and large, I think the tutorials are really going to just help you understand a lot better of what's going on in this game. I honestly think that majority of these are the basics are kind of similar between all the civilizations. You want to make sure that your villagers aren't idle. You'll see an idle villager button right down there. I keep getting attacked by these wolves, and I really hate them. Oh, here we go. We'll garrison these villagers. I'm running the wrong direction. Looks like my garrison villagers will probably be able to take care of all of... Is he sending... Oh, no, those are spearmen. Let's see, is this man sending villagers at me? And I accidentally called this guy away. And there is quite a lot to learn about these games. How the civs work, how units counter other units, what civilizations work good for particular play styles and maps. I honestly do think that a lot of this is just going to come down to experience, just understanding what you prefer. And just, if you're scared of playing online or kind of overwhelmed by all of the options, play some skirmish games. Put it on easy AI. You can really tinker with these settings, turn off Fog of War so you can see what your opponent's doing. You can even look at some game replays of some of your favorite content creators and see how they play. There are some small tidbits I guess I can offer, some parting words, such as if you're town center, you can set a rally point by clicking the right mouse button. If it's yellow, that means that it's just a location, and if you build a villager, they're just going to stand there. However, if you wanted them to gather a resource as soon as they're done, like let's say, for example, I want this villager to get wood, you're going to want to make sure that you right-click directly on that resource. So it'll turn blue, meaning that the villager that is trained will actually get that resource. So there are some times where you'll even put it really close, like let's say right here, and the villager will not actually gather the wood. We'll see here on this next villager that comes out. He'll just stand right next to these trees. And that happens quite often, but I guess that's just a little a tip there. There are some other issues that villagers have that I'm not quite fond of. You'll hear me complain about them in videos. So you see she'll just stand there. So right-clicking, if the line is blue, that does mean that your villagers will be going to that resource. You want to make sure as you progress into the late game that you want to build some markets so you can make some traders to trade. If you're playing in ones, you'll be trading to a trading post, which are these. You get a little bit of bonus resources, 20% more than going to, say, your teammates market. However, your teammates market are generally pretty safe because you and your teammate can, of course, pick where you want to place your markets, making very safe trade routes. That usually happens on the bottom edges of the map. And of course, the longer the trade route, the more resources you're going to get. You can use relics to convert units into from the opponent's team onto your team. You'll need a prelate or a scholar or a monk, whatever the term is, and he needs to hold the relic. And then you click this button, and he'll begin to do the Wololo scream. I think I kind of really was throwing out a whole lot of tips and facts and tricks here. So it's not necessarily a flow that I have for these, just kind of really doing this impromptu. So I'd love to know your feedback if I should be a little bit more organized, want me to focus on particular civilizations, build orders, things that I've learned from playing Age of Empires for a long time. Please let me know in the comments. And if you want to see us playing real online matches and having a blast, check out the Age of Empires playlist that I have, and you'll be able to see all the fun that we have playing online. That's going to do it for me. You can play Age of Empires 4, by the way, through PC Game Pass. If you're unsure of buying or paying $60 for this game and buying it outright, you can get Game Pass really cheap. I don't know how much it is these days, but you can just pick it up and try out Age of Empires 4 as well as the other Age games and see if you have a particular Age game that you enjoy or if Age of Empires 4 is right for you. But I think if you enjoy strategy games and base building and, military, old school, well, not really old school, but feudal, historical battle games, this is right up your alley. That's going to do it for me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you, James.